It's a crazy world out there. Now what happens, how I use this is when I'm in a situation and I'm looking at a problem, the first thing I try to think about is it a simple, complicated, complex, or hopefully not, chaotic problem, right? So let's take healthcare. Donald Trump said on the campaign trail that it was simple. Right? He most recently said, what did he most recently say? It's more complicated. So he's moved up there, right? What he doesn't yet, well actually now that the Health Care Act is out, the Republican version, what are they beginning to understand? It's actually quite complex, right? And if not handled correctly, it will be chaotic, right? So it's actually, I find very useful when I'm looking at a situation to think about where I am. Now, one of the things, okay, there are biases in this, right? There's an assumption that you always go counterclockwise and that you go in steps. But you can actually go from simple to chaotic. You can jump that fence, you can jump that wall, right? And you can go backwards the other way. But the point is that, when I look at a problem, I first try to think about what kind of problem I'm facing. And what's also interesting about this is the role of expertise. Because we tend to think that expertise is what we need for critical thinking, right? Good thinking outcomes. But the expert is unnecessary in the simple problem, useful in the complicated problem, not particularly helpful in a complex problem, and absolutely disastrous in a chaotic problem. The expert will be fooled by their expertise and not be able to anticipate the new that is emerging, right? Here's Eeyore and Pooh. Actually, I'm an optimist by nature, a very good friend. A thinking partner for me is someone who's quite a pessimist. And we will debate and discuss issues over a glass or two of wine. And we know we have a problem. Well, we know the situation is very difficult and fluid when I start expressing pessimistic thoughts and she starts expressing optimistic thoughts. But have a thinking partner. Pursue cognitive diversity. Now, I on purpose went out and found on the internet every trite picture, right, I saw associated with cognitive diversity. What I mean by cognitive diversity, we were talking about the different thinking styles earlier, is that you need to think about how you form your work teams to be sure that you have the adequate variation in thinking styles to solve your problems. Now, how many people here come from human resources? There's a few, okay? I think the future of human resources is actually helping organizations understand thinking styles and putting them together in a way that maximizes your ability to solve a problem. So updating your critical thinking skills is not a function of an individual. It's a function of a team, because no one individual can correct for all their cognitive biases and deficits. Now, there's a book that I sort of recommend. It's a textbook, so it's really expensive, like $100 plus, but it came out 3 years ago. So I recommend the content, I don't recommend the price. Rebels and Groups. And it's a compilation of all the latest research on the importance of dissidence, defiance, and diversity in teams. And it has some powerful recent social science research on this topic. And one of my favorite points that it makes is that study after study shows that in teams where a different opinion is the dissenting, sorry, that's what I was looking for. In teams where dissenting opinions get an audience, the performance of those teams is better, and this is the killer, even when the dissenting opinion was wrong. Right? So we tend as organizations to say, oh, we're going to listen to that other view because they could be right. That's actually not the way to look at it. We're going to listen to that other view because it's going to improve everyone's performance. And the dynamic that occurs in teams where dissenting opinions are well listened to is that everybody then works harder to explore the evidence, understand the assumptions, so that everybody works harder on whatever their opinion is when there's a healthy climate of debate. So I think the future of work is cognitive diversity and having just a little bit more knowledge about what cognitive skills you need to attack a particular problem. Remodel your brain. Now, I was looking for, so that's what I talk about, remodeling your brain and rethinking your categorization scheme. Two last points about how to upgrade your skills, which are contradictory to everything else I've said, but are, right? But are very important, right? You have to respect your intuition. Intuition is actually, our brain, and this is something that cognitive scientists talk about, not just me. Our brain has a habit of noticing things that we are not consciously aware of. So oftentimes when we have sort of an intuitive feel about something, it's actually our brain recognizing a pattern that we consciously don't recognize yet. And I'm sure all of you have had experiences along these lines. So respect your intuition and understand, secondly, the limits to your critical thinking. This is a great, who is this actress? It's just awesome. Who is this actress? Betty Davis, yeah. Okay, how many of you know who Betty Davis is? Okay, that's all right, yeah. But anyway, this is a movie called The Letter, and she obviously has pretty much abandoned her critical thinking skills at this point, right? And so, emotions are not necessarily bad. There's a reason why, even at this advanced state of evolution, human beings are still essentially emotional creatures. What I like to say is, you have to understand the problem and develop a considered position, and then you need to know how to present it in a way that is in a narrative, tells a story, and appeals emotionally to the people that you're trying to persuade. Because when you're explaining, you're losing.